Okay. So earlier today I posted the link for the video or picture tutorial for this. You do need the pattern. It is free, but you do have to put it in your cart and pay for it, even though it's free. And so this is what the pattern looks like. So for each key ring, you need 2 pieces of fabric, and then you need 2 pieces of interfacing. So if you've never worked with interfacing before, this is a stabilizer. This is a very lightweight one, and if you look close enough, you can see little dots on there. That is glue. This is a fusible interfacing, which means we can iron it on, and those little pieces of glue will end up melting and sticking to the fabric. So that's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to put the interfacing on. So you want to take your 2 pieces. I already have a couple of these cut out. And you lay them face down. And then you're going to take your interfacing, and there's the part that feels bumpy, the side with the glue, and you're going to make sure that is face down on the back side. You also need steam in your iron for this. So when you're working with interfacing, it needs 3 things. It needs pressure, steam, and heat. So I'm going to just basically put my iron down. Sometimes you can also wet a pressing cloth and do that as well. So now that is glued on there. I'm just going to go ahead and do the couple that I have cut out, so then that way I can send a couple people some of these. So Made for Mermaids and Patterns for Pirates are 2 sister companies. There's actually sisters that own them, and both of them have a couple free patterns. So the leggings that I made for the one demo, that was Pattern for Pirates. There's also a cocoon cardigan, even though that one's not free. There's a pencil skirt that's free. So if you're looking to get started sewing and you don't want to pay a bunch of money, I would definitely look into some of the free patterns. There's a headband on one of those 2. What else? I think a tree skirt. I'm trying to think what else I've done. So the interfacing on these I cut 1.5 by 6.5. If you notice, I'm picking up my iron and moving it over. I'm not sliding it. Sliding it can cause the interfacing to move, and then you end up getting it stuck not where you want it. This green batik fabric I'm using here doesn't have a right or wrong side, so it doesn't really matter which one. But all my other fabrics have a right or wrong side, so I'm attaching this to the back of the fabric. If you accidentally put the interfacing upside down, have the sticky part, the glue part facing up, then it is going to get stuck on your iron, and then you're going to have to clean it off. So this doesn't take long to attach at all. There's also sew-in interfacing, which you sew on, it doesn't have a glue on it. So I had 2 different type of key rings, so I'll probably do 2 of each when I make these. This is a clasp with a ring on it, so I'm gonna put it around here, and then it'll clip on. You could also do the typical key ring, which I have a bunch of those. So I figured I would grab both. So before I go over to the machine now, what I need to do is put my right sides of my pieces together. So I'm going to lay them so my right sides are touching. And again, I just cut out 4, and these are actually strips that I had left over from cutting my mask, so it was perfect. This is a great scrap buster. Make sure that you use a woven fabric for this. Don't use a stretchy fabric. Okay, so we're going to go over to the machine. So the seam allowance on this is 1/4, And we have to leave a hole to turn it right side out. So when you're doing something like this, the best thing to do is leave your opening in the center of a side. And since this is our longest, these two are our longest sides, I'm going to leave an opening in the middle of one of the long edges. So 1/4 for me is needle all the way over to the right. And we need to pivot every time you see a corner. And you want to make sure you backstitch at both the beginning and the end. So if you're not sure where to pivot, you can mark it. You can also sew and then turn it and see if you're in the right spot. So every time I pivot, I'm leaving my needle in the fabric and then I'm turning it. It looks kind of long, but you're going to end up folding this in half once we're done sewing this part. So then you'll see it ends up not being quite that long. Pivot, go across the bottom. I think I went one too many. And so now I'm going to make sure that if my beginning was here, I'm going to make sure I leave an opening on this side. And again, it doesn't have to be exact. So I'm going to do a couple while I'm on here. And the thread color for this part doesn't matter because you're not going to see any of this stitching because this is all going to be on the inside. Okay, so I'm just going to sew these two. So now what we need to do is trim our corners of this, otherwise when we turn it, we're not going to have square corners. So everywhere you see a corner, you're going to cut diagonally across the corner as close as you can to the stitching without cutting through it. So there's a lot of corners on this one. These ones are the kind of the weirdest here. So you're gonna have a long cut there. And scissors or shears are fine for clipping these as long as the scissors can go through the fabric. Okay, so now we have to turn it, and I need something to poke out the corners. So it's going to be a little bit smaller than it was originally because we sewed it in further. So once I get it turned, I'm going to take my point turner, stick it in there. When I get to the corners, I do want to push them out, but I want to take it easy there so that I don't accidentally poke a hole if I did cut a little bit close. Once you get the bottom two corners done, then you want to come up here to the top. Again, just every time there's a corner, just use the point turner, but just make sure, whoops, went a little far there. We're going to be sewing over that. Okay, and then our opening is right there, but I'm going to press it in a second in that opening will go to the inside. So again, when you're trimming corners and stuff like that, I know it seems like it might be a waste of time to do that, but you're going to end up with a much nicer looking product when you do that, because then you can get your corners square. If I try to turn this and without trimming the corners off, I'm going to have rounded corners instead of square. Okay, so I'm going to poke the corners out on this one. Okay, so once I get that done, I'm just going to press it real quick so that I can fold that opening inward. So I'm just going to take my fingers and fold in where the opening is to get it to look nice. And then I'm going to press. So it looks kind of like a pencil. And I'm going to do the same for this one. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to fold it. So I'm going to bring the bottom up, and I'm going to make the very bottom edge even with those two corners that I had. So I'm going to have that there, and then I'm going to do the same thing on this one. So again, bring it up to where the corners are. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew around the sides and up around some top stitching, and then we'll put the key ring on. So this stitching here is going to close your opening and sew it together all at the same time. I'm going to put my needle in the center so that I can sew close to the edges. So you want to sew, this is top stitching, so you want to do it at about 1/8 of an inch. Oh, I shouldn't have started there. Hold on. I forgot. That's where I want to end. We don't have to sew along the bottom fold, so I'm going to start at this bottom and do it up to that point. I should have started here from the beginning, because you really don't need any stitching along the bottom. I'm going to back stitch just a couple stitches right where the bottom meets that, just so that it's extra secure, because when you're putting your lip balm on there, you're going to end up pulling on it, so I don't want that stitching to come out. So I'm just going around the edges, and then I'll just overlap my beginning and end since I started at the wrong spot. Okay, so I started there, but I should really have started down here and gone around. So on this one, I'm going to make sure that I do it correctly. And you want the stitching to be close to the edge. If you sew in too far, then it's not going to be big enough to hold the lip balm. So I'm trying to do it like 1/8 of an inch from the edge. So when I get to the bottom edge where it came folded up, I'm just going to do some back stitches there. You could pin this if you wanted to, but I don't think you actually need to, because it's pretty stable with the interfacing in there. And so it pretty much stayed put when I just folded it. So I'm going to pivot, and then I'm going to do a couple back stitches again just at the top of that part so that it doesn't come out. And then I'm going to go down this edge, and then I'm going to back stitch at the end. Okay, so at this point it looks like this. I'm going to trim my threads. Okay, and now it's time to put our key ring on. So when we do this, I may have to put my zipper foot on, because the zipper foot allows you to sew pretty close to the edge. So one of them So I'm gonna take the, not really super pointy edge, but I'm gonna take the top part in, and then I'm gonna bring that down, and then I'm gonna sew right across there. Then this one, I'm gonna do the same thing. Put the top through the ring, and then sew across there. And then the key ring will be done. So I'm gonna switch to my zipper foot so I can get a little closer to the edge. Actually, I wanna do this side. Okay, so I'm gonna put it in the machine like this so that I can sew right across there. And I want to try and have my stitching on top of where the stitching was for the last stitching that I did. So I'm going to make sure I back stitch. Forward stitch and back stitch. Okay, so I stitched across there, and now the key ring is on. You can put a lip balm in there. So now I'm just gonna do the same thing on this one. This one's gonna be a little harder because the ring is going around like that. So actually, I think it'll be easier if I just do the clasp part. If I was making more with the other key ring type, I would probably make the point a little longer so that I would be able to sew it a little easier, because there's not really much room to work with. So make sure you back stitch. And the key ring is finished. So I'm just gonna trim those couple of threads that are on there. If you like this type of key clasp, you can order them on Amazon. They're not really expensive. I had bought them a while ago when I was doing a bag. It was cheaper to just buy a whole bag of them than just the one that or two that I needed. So please comment that you've watched this, and then I'm going to do the drawing tomorrow to give everybody a chance to watch it and be in the running. So anybody who comments on it, put your name in a hat, and I'll be sending the 2 lucky winners, maybe 4 if I get the others 2 done, the lip balm key rings. So have a good day.